Hey guys, tonight we're heading back to a time where you wake up under a leaky roof in a quiet village nestled between misty hills. It's early morning in 1603, and Japan has just entered the Edo period. The air smells like wet wood and leftover fish broth. Your knees ache from sleeping on straw, and the only job you're trained for is illegal now. Why? Because you're a ninja, and peace has officially broken out. Congratulations, you probably won't survive this. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're listening from somewhere cozy, drop your location and local time in the comments. I love seeing how far we travel together. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The year is 1603, and you shuffle out of your hut with the sun barely peeking over the cedar trees. Your back is sore because someone borrowed your bedding straw again. You scratch at the mosquito bites behind your neck, tug your ragged kimono tighter, and try not to trip over a sleeping chicken. Another day begins. Another day pretending not to be what you are. See, you used to be someone. Kind of. A tool, mostly. A shadowy figure in the service of a clan lord who was always one bad haiku away from declaring war. Back then, everyone needed ninjas. You snuck through castles, listened through screens, poisoned a rival lord's koi pond once. Those were the days. But that was before Tokugawa Ieyasu shut the door on civil war and nailed it shut with 250 years of enforced peace. Peace is great for poetry, terrible for a career in sneaking around and throwing sharp things. So now you have to smile politely while villagers ask if you're just a quiet farmer. You try not to laugh or cry. Farming is more dangerous than espionage. You stubbed your toe on a plow yesterday and almost died of tetanus. Historians still argue whether the ninja truly faded away in the Edo period or simply went deeper underground. The truth is more boring. Many became bureaucrats, bodyguards, or glorified mailmen. You're not even lucky enough to be a mailman. You're just waiting. For what? A mission, a reason to matter. But for now, you're sent into town to fetch rice. Again. The marketplace bustles. Samurai in fancy robes pretend they don't see you, even though they once paid you to follow their mistresses. Merchants sell overpriced fans with painted cranes, and there's a guy making dumplings that smell like something illegal. You drift through it all like smoke, eyes always scanning old habits. You know how to pick out which umbrella hides a blade. You know that the monk over there is carrying a forged prayer scroll. But no one wants your insights. They want cheap labor and exact change. At night, you return to the clan house. It's crumbling. Half the roof tiles are cracked. Your sensei, now in his 70s, spends most evenings squinting at a Go board and sighing theatrically. No war, no glory, he mumbles, again and again. You're too tired to nod. You're also too tired to mention that his last bath was a historical event in itself. Dinner is miso soup with one lonely tofu cube and pickled radish. Luxury. You eat in silence, side-eyeing your clanmates who are equally disheartened. The youngest one, Jiro, still has hope. He polishes his shuriken every night like he's auditioning for a stage play that'll never open. You lie down after dinner and stare at the ceiling. A spider drops down and dangles above your face. You don't flinch. It's your only company most nights. There's a popular belief that ninjas train to control their heart rate and breathing to stay undetected. You've taken that to the next level. You don't even react when someone steps over your legs at night to use the latrine. You breathe so quietly. Even the rats look startled when they realize you're awake. You remember your training in the forest, barefoot sprints over gravel, climbing trees blindfolded, silent swimming in frigid rivers. It felt purposeful. Noble, even. Now, the closest thing you do to stealth is slipping out of a tax inspector's line of sight. People forget that being a ninja wasn't about flashy flips or fighting samurai on rooftops. It was mostly about not being seen, not being caught, not being remembered. Unfortunately, now you're all three, seen as a nobody, caught in a peaceful time, remembered as a walking joke. Sometimes you sneak into town just to feel something. You loiter by the tea house and listen to gossip. A daimyo's daughter allegedly ran off with a poet. A merchant was found with a secret map sewn into his kimono. You pretend you're still part of that world. Then you go home, quietly. You've considered leaving, taking up a new identity in Kyoto, maybe, becoming a monk or a calligrapher. But every time you try, something pulls you back. Maybe it's loyalty to the clan, maybe it's habit, or maybe you're just afraid to admit your skills are obsolete. You drift to sleep on your straw mat, counting the sounds. Frog croaks, a creaking beam, your own breath. In your dreams, you're leaping across tiled rooftops again, dressed in black, heart racing with purpose. Then you wake up to a sore neck and someone boiling daikon next door. Being a ninja in Edo, Japan is like being a race car driver in a city that just outlawed cars. You still have the instincts, the reflexes, the craving for adrenaline, but nowhere to go, nothing to chase, and the roads are all cobbled anyway. But still, each morning, you wake up. You tie your sash, you wait. Because one day, maybe, just maybe, someone will knock on that rice paper door and whisper, "We have a mission." And until then, you sharpen your dullest blade, out of boredom more than hope. You wake up before dawn again, not because you're disciplined, although you are, but because your neighbor's rooster has no concept of volume control. It's the kind of sound that makes you want to throw a shuriken through a beak. You won't, of course. That would draw attention, and attention is poison to your kind. You sit up on your mat and stretch your back. It pops in 3 different places. That's the only excitement you'll have all morning. Peace has broken out across Japan, and peace, you're discovering, is deeply inconvenient for a professional sneak. The Tokugawa Shogunate is firmly in control now. The great clans have been tamed. Castles are mostly decorative. Samurai spend their days writing poetry and enforcing noise ordinances. The streets are cleaner. The tax system is functional. In other words, your entire resume has been set on fire. You used to be a blade in the dark, a whisper in the wind. Now you're more like a retired athlete wandering the mall, reminiscing about when people cared. Your knees still creak from scaling stone walls. Your fingers still twitch at every shift in shadow. But there's nothing to do with those instincts, except maybe chop kindling, which, for the record, you're excellent at. Historians still argue whether ninja were ever organized agents in the way pop culture imagines. Some say they were closer to scouts and spies for regional warlords. Others believe they were more like rogue freelancers. But here's what's certain. Once war became illegal under Tokugawa rule, your services were suddenly frowned upon. Not officially. No one came and said, "You there, man in tabi socks, you are now unemployed." No, it was slower than that. Missions became rare. Meetings stopped happening. Your contact in Osaka stopped sending coded letters. 1 week turned into 1 month, then a year, and now here you are sweeping the walkway of a house that once held secrets in every wall. You used to hide scrolls in bamboo tubes and bury them in the garden. Now the garden grows radishes, real ones. You're pretty sure one of your old hiding spots now has a compost pile on top of it. Not very dignified. Your sensei insists on maintaining old rituals. Every morning, you bow to the clan banner in the empty hall. Every evening, he recites the clan's ancestral names like they're still listening. Maybe they are, but probably not. Probably they're too busy haunting someone who actually still matters. At noon, you walk to the town square again. This time, not for rice, just to feel less invisible. You pass a new kabuki theater going up, all bright paper lanterns and hammering wood. A troupe of actors rehearses outside. One of them does a clumsy cartwheel in a dramatic wig. You wince, not because it's bad, but because it's too close. That flip is a shadow of the real thing, of your thing, except they get applause. You get ignored. One actor sees you watching and waves. You nod politely and move on. You're not here to mingle. You're here to remind yourself that the world still moves. Down an alley, you see a samurai pacing in full armor. Unusual. Most samurai don't bother any more armor-s for festivals and portraits these days. You watch him. His movements are jittery, like he's trying to start something but can't find a reason. You know that feeling. A kind of phantom limb syndrome of the warrior class. He catches you looking and stiffens. You bow slightly. He walks off. No duel, no whispered message, just tension dissolving like mist. It would be easier if you could adapt. Some of your peers have. Taro runs a noodle shop now. He says he likes the structure. Haru married a widow and farms sweet potatoes. You think he cries sometimes while planting, but he says he's happy. You don't believe him. You tried once to teach village children. Ninja lessons in secret, nothing serious, just balance, listening exercises, a few harmless tricks. They loved it. Their parents did not. You were politely but firmly asked to stop influencing impressionable minds with your war stories. So now they learn flower arranging instead. You know peace is better, rationally, intellectually. You know fewer people are dying and the roads are safer and crops are thriving. But emotionally, it's like being an artist in a world that banned paint. Sometimes you dream of rebellion, a false one maybe, stage some fake conflict just to feel needed. But that's the kind of thinking that gets you executed, even in a peaceful era, especially in a peaceful era. The government doesn't like reminders of old systems. You're living history, and living history makes people nervous. There's a rumor that some ninja clans offered their services to the shogunate, working with the government to suppress dissent. Irony, right? You, a former rebel tool, now upholding the status quo. You considered it once, but the pay was terrible and the uniform was worse. You return home and find a pigeon on your roof. For a brief moment, your heart jumps. Pigeons used to mean messages. You used to intercept them, decipher them, burn the remains. This one just pooped on your windowsill and flew off. Message received. That night, you lie awake longer than usual. You trace the old scars on your palm from a throwing star mishap years ago. They've faded, but you remember the sting. You remember the applause when you finally stuck the target at 20 paces. You remember the quiet nod from your sensei when you returned from your first mission with dirt under your nails, and a stolen map tucked inside your sash. Now, you can't even remember the last time someone asked you to do anything. The clan house has more cats than people these days. You don't mind. They move quietly. They keep to themselves. You understand each other. One of them curls up next to your feet as you drift into a half-sleep. You dream again of rooftops. In this dream, you're running from something. Not a guard, not a rival, just irrelevance. You leap from rooftop to rooftop, but every tile crumbles. Every wall you cling to turns to paper. You fall, and when you land, you're back in your room. The cat meows. You open your eyes. It's still night. You stare into the dark, and for a moment, you let yourself feel the weight of it. The stillness. The way your breath echoes in a room once filled with plans and plots and whispered urgency. You can't ninja here anymore. Not really. But the ghost of it stays in your bones. And maybe, just maybe, tomorrow someone will need a quiet man with a good ear and a better memory. Maybe the world will find a use for you again. Until then, you sleep light, because peace might be permanent, but habits like yours die slow. Morning again, same dull light filtering through cracked shoji screens, same muted clang of pots as someone reheats last night's rice. You sit up and breathe through the stiffness in your spine. Your joints creak louder than your footsteps. You're becoming a ghost, one rice ration at a time. The sun hasn't fully cleared the horizon, but you're already dressed and halfway out the door. You move quietly, not because you're trying to sneak, but because you don't know how not to. Every step still avoids loose floorboards. Every blink maps exits and shadows. It's muscle memory now. It's who you are, even if nobody needs it anymore. Back in the day, you'd vanish before breakfast, slipping into the gray mist of dawn to track a caravan, tail a samurai, or intercept a courier. These days, you vanish for your own sake, to keep the quiet alive, to remind yourself that shadows still exist, even in a world that doesn't ask you to hide. So you take the back paths through the village, the ones no one else remembers, dirt trails behind shrines, dry creeks behind granaries. You know every stone, every route. You mapped them as a boy when they told you, know your village like your skin. And you did, but the village changed, got cleaner, brighter. You somehow stayed the same. Your latest hiding spot is under an old sake shop. The floorboards above are warped from humidity and bad brewing. You can sit perfectly still down there and hear the gossip float through the slats. It's rarely useful but comforting. Human noise, unfiltered. Today, they're complaining about tax collectors again. You smile. Some things never change. Once, a message was passed to you by slipping it into a basket of pickled plums delivered here. That was 20 years ago. The shop owner has since gone blind. His son runs things now. You think he suspects something's odd about the man who lingers too long by the side wall every third morning. But he's too polite to ask, or too afraid. Historians still argue whether the concept of ninja villages was literal, hidden communities dedicated solely to espionage, or romanticized by later authors. You grew up in one, and while it didn't have secret tunnels or disappearing buildings, it did have rules, unspoken ones. Don't draw attention. Don't speak unless necessary. Always listen twice as much as you talk. You're excellent at listening. And today, you hear something new. A name, when you haven't heard in years. Lord Nakagawa, a merchant says. Hiring again, quiet work I hear. You freeze mid-step, a breath caught in the middle of your throat. Nakagawa. That family used to employ your clans sporadically and only for dirty errands. Not assassination, not anymore, but for information, influence, secrets, soft power. The kind that's legal if you squint at it. You don't move. You pretend to be fascinated by a small weed growing through a crack in the wall, but your ears open wider. They say he's looking for someone good with messages. The merchant continues, lowering his voice. Discreet-like. The shopkeeper grunts. Aren't we all? That's it. No details, no address, no payment promised, but it's something. You wait until the shop clears out. Then you leave the way you came, in silence. Your breath comes faster as you walk, not because you're scared, because you haven't felt this in months. Years, maybe. That slight quickening of the blood, that flicker of possibility, a thread of relevance tugging at your sleeve. You stop by the river and crouch low, pretending to check your sandals. A boy splashes in the water nearby, skipping stones. You glance left, then right, no one watching. You slip a small pebble from your sleeve and drop it into the river. It sinks slowly, part of an old signal, a call for ears. Your clanmates, if they're paying attention, will see, and they'll know you've heard something worth hearing. You don't expect an answer, not really, but you feel better knowing you did it. Back home, you take out your kit. It's wrapped in cloth, hidden in a loose floorboard under your bedding. You unfold it carefully. Inside, a few rusted tools, an ink brush, a coil of thin cord, and a broken blow dart pipe. You touch each one like a priest tending relics. You used to carry these everywhere. Now they're artifacts, but maybe not useless, not yet. The scrolls are still there, too. You copied them by hand years ago, codes, signals, field marks, nothing flashy, just enough to keep the memory alive. You study them like a monk reading scripture, not because you expect to use them, but because forgetting would be worse. At sunset, you take your meal to the roof. It's quiet up here. You watch the rooftops stretch across the village, some new, some ancient, all bathed in orange light. You used to cross these rooftops in the dead of night, never touching the ground for miles. Now you just sit and chew cold rice. And then you hear a cough, deliberate, not close but not far. You scan the shadows, nothing. Another cough, softer. You narrow your eyes, that's a code. I see you. Someone else remembers. Someone's still playing the game. You let out a long, silent breath and smile for the first time in days. You don't respond. Not yet. Let them wonder if it was really you. Let them think they imagined it. That night, you return to your mat and sleep more deeply than you have in weeks. In your dream, you're not running. You're just there, balanced between tree branches, watching a lantern-lit road. No urgency, no fear, just that perfect stillness where the world forgets you exist and you forget the world right back. You live in the shadows, yes, but not because you're hiding. Because that's where you see best. You wake to rain this morning, soft, persistent, and just annoying enough to leak through the same hole in the roof you keep forgetting to patch. Your sleeves damp before you even sit up. One of the cats is curled on your foot, dreaming of fish or vengeance. Probably both. You shuffle over to the floorboard where your old kit lies, hidden like a shameful secret. You unwrap the cloth again, this time not out of nostalgia, but out of quiet irritation. Because today you're going to repair your grappling hook. And the joke is, it was never a grappling hook in the first place. Just a rusty sickle on a rope. The myth of the ninja toolkit is strong. It's what the kabuki actors love to show. Rows of sleek throwing stars, shiny black masks, poison-tipped darts, blowguns, and those iconic clawed climbing gloves. You chuckle at the thought. Half of that stuff either never existed or was made from repurposed farm tools and things your grandmother used to beat carpets. Take your own gear, for instance. Your so-called climbing claws, repurposed stirrups. Sharp, yes, but not exactly elegant. And that ninja sword? It's a wakizashi, a short blade useful for close quarters or prying open shutters. Yours is chipped from using it to dig out a splintered floorboard 2 winters ago. Don't judge. You had nothing else to do. Historians still argue whether ninjas had a standard set of equipment or whether they used whatever was available. Spoiler, it was definitely the latter. You once knew a man who fought with sharpened chopsticks because he'd lost all his blades gambling. You respected that. You dig out your coiled rope, hemp, rough, frayed. You sniff it. Still smells like soy sauce. That mission in the merchant district 5 years ago, a whole night hiding in pickle barrels. You were pulling radish seeds out of your sleeves for days. The sickle's edge is dull. You could fix that. But even when it was sharp, it wasn't meant for battle. It was a rice harvesting tool. You used it because it was easy to explain away when searched. "Oh, I'm a farmer," you'd say. And if someone got too curious, well, it doubled as a fairly efficient persuader. The blowgun is next. Yours is a hollow bamboo shoot, stained dark with ink to hide it in shadow. The darts? Toothpicks, really. Once you used them to pin a letter to a rival clan's gate. No poison, no blood, just drama. That was the best mission you ever had. You wish someone had clapped. You still have a few small pouches of smoke powder, though it's more of a wheezy fog than anything truly cinematic. Ingredients: ash, flour, dried chili, and a pinch of ground hornet. You once accidentally inhaled your own cloud and couldn't breathe right for a week. Stealth has a cost. There's also the mirror, your prized possession. A small polished disc you used to reflect light signals across hills. Or, more recently, to check for nose hairs before village festivals. It's important to repurpose. And of course, the legendary shuriken. You dig one out carefully. It's not sharp, never really was, just enough to nick skin or embed in a paper screen with a satisfying thwack. You painted yours black with squid ink. They stain more than they slice, but they look intimidating. You keep one tucked in your sleeve out of habit, haven't thrown it in years. Sometimes children ask you, quietly when their parents aren't watching, if you can show them a real ninja weapon. You pull out a small pouch, open it slowly, dramatically, and reveal a handful of beans, hard soybeans, perfect for tossing to distract a guard or make someone slip. Their faces fall. "That's it," one girl said once. Yes, that's it. There's poetry in simplicity. That's what you tell yourself as you rewrap your tools in the faded cloth. But deep down, you miss the feeling of being equipped, of checking your belt, knowing each item had a purpose. Now they just clink together sadly when you move, like bones in a forgotten reliquary. You visit the town today with your empty rice sack slung over one shoulder. It used to carry documents, secret maps, even the occasional contraband. Now it holds cabbages. You stop by a stall selling knives and linger longer than necessary. The merchant eyes you. "Looking for something sharp?" he asks. You lift a rusted farming blade and turn it over in your hands. It feels too light. "Just browsing," you mumble. He nods. "Tools are tools." You nod back, but the truth is some tools are ghosts. You walk home in the drizzle. The path is muddy and your foot slips once. Not far, but enough to jar your knee. You curse, quietly, respectfully. The world is no longer designed for the way you move. The roofs are steeper. The fences more decorative than functional. You feel out of place in a world shaped for peace. That night, you sit by candlelight and sketch out a new idea. A tool you never got to make. A folding grappling hook made from 3 flattened sake spoons and a metal ring. It would be light, easy to hide. You smile at your own cleverness, even if it'll never be built. The sketch joins a small pile in the corner, dreams drawn in ink, never used. You remember one last item, the silent sandals. The soles were padded with cotton and deer hide, meant to muffle your steps. They worked beautifully, until they soaked up water like sponges and made you sound like you were squelching through a rice field. You burned them in frustration. Now you just walk barefoot. It's quieter, less dignified but quieter. You lie down for sleep, the old tools wrapped beside you like a comfort blanket. They don't do much anymore, but they remind you of who you were, of what you could still be in the right light. The rain keeps falling. The roof leaks on cue. But for the first time in weeks, you feel a bit warmer, not because the tools work, but because they still exist. And you still remember how to use them, even if the world forgot why you needed to. You rise before the sun again, not because you're noble or disciplined or one with nature, but because your left shoulder cramps if you sleep past 4th bell. You sit up with a grunt, stretch with the grace of a creaky door hinge, and immediately knock your head on the ceiling beam. That's how the great warriors begin their day now, with head bumps and aging joints. Training, they said, is the foundation of mastery. And they were right. But they didn't tell you what happens when you master everything, and no one wants to hire a master anymore. Still, you train. Because what else would you do? You step outside into the chill, barefoot on dewy grass. A mist hangs low, curling between rice paddies and bamboo groves. You take a breath deep and slow, then begin your kata, the same one you've done every morning since you were 12. Slow movements first. Balance, posture, breathing. You hold a stance for too long. Your knee wobbles. Your cat watches, unimpressed. This was once the heart of your life. Repetitive drills that conditioned your muscles and mind for silence, agility, and absolute precision. But without real assignments, training becomes theoretical. Like a poet composing haiku about the scent of danger while picking cabbage. Your morning continues with climbing drills on the old cedar tree behind the clan house. The bark's worn smooth from decades of practice. You once climbed it blindfolded with a watermelon tied to your back. For awareness. Now, just you and your stiff fingers clinging to a trunk that's starting to lean. You pause halfway up. A bird chirps near your ear. You freeze. Years ago, that sound would have been a signal. Now it's just a bird, possibly mocking you. Down again. Roll. Stand. Roll again. You roll so often that your neighbors probably think you're an eccentric laundry bundle. Historians still argue whether ninja training was closer to spiritual asceticism or practical survivalism. The answer, as always, is yes. You learn to blend both. Days of meditation and breath control. Nights of crawling through mud. You've held your breath underwater until your ears popped and walked barefoot on snow to train your pain tolerance. You once balanced on a bamboo pole for 6 hours just to prove a point. You don't even remember what the point was. And the baths, cold baths, not for cleanliness but discipline. You strip and pour freezing water over yourself while mentally reciting clan maxims. Endure like stone, move like wind, never flinch. You flinch every time. It's really, really cold. You dry off with a towel that could double as sandpaper and sip lukewarm barley tea. Breakfast is a single rice ball, not because you're ascetic, because rice is expensive and you had to patch your only pair of Tabi socks this week. Then it's time for target practice. You've built a small range behind the storage shed. It's just a row of straw bales, but each has a painted face on it, your idea of motivation. One resembles a tax officer. Another is just labeled existential doubt. You throw your shuriken. The first hits the edge. The second sticks. The third bounces off with a sad little plink. You sigh. Not because you missed, because part of you wonders why you're even aiming anymore. Once you trained for missions where a single mistake meant death or disgrace. Now you aim for routine, habit, sanity. Your body remembers the movements, even when the world doesn't remember you. You break midday with stretches and an old chant. You hum the syllables more than pronounce them now, half-forgotten mantras meant to sync your breath with motion. You think it also doubles as a lullaby for your cat, who immediately dozes off. There's a scroll you recopy every few weeks, a list of forms, techniques, and field procedures. The ink is fading from overuse. You add a note at the bottom today. Form 27, avoid cabbage merchant, he gossips. A joke, sort of, but also true. You find your balance pole in the courtyard. A thin beam of wood lashed atop 2 crates. You walk it like it's a castle wall, arms out, eyes focused. You've done this for so long, you can walk it while reciting the opening scene of your favorite no play. Until you step wrong and eat gravel. You lie there for a moment, chewing a bit of courtyard. Your cat climbs onto your chest like it owns the place, which, to be fair, it might. You don't get up immediately. You just stare at the clouds. They never trained you for what to do with a life that outlives your purpose. They trained you to survive everything but boredom. Some of your clanmates quit training entirely. Gyro spends his mornings chasing ducks out of the vegetable patch. Haru drinks sake and claims fluid motion is a spiritual replacement for kata. You disagree, but quietly. You train because stopping feels like forgetting, and forgetting feels like disappearing. Besides, the training is the only place you still feel like yourself. Even if the exercises are out of date, even if your knees hurt and the straw targets mock you, even if the world doesn't care, you still sharpen your senses. You still track bird flight for changes in weather. You still listen to footsteps 2 houses away and know who's limping. You still count breaths between distant conversations to tell how tense a meeting is. You still watch. And that, maybe, is the one part of training that can't be taken from you. You're no longer useful, but you're still ready. Just in case. Because the world might need you again. And you refuse to be out of shape when that day comes. You close your training session with a bow toward the empty dojo wall. There used to be banners there, symbols. Now it's just faded plaster and a spider building an empire in the corner. You bow anyway. Then you sweep the dirt floor, because the spider's empire sheds a lot. You sit under the veranda and drink water slowly, watching steam rise from your skin. The evening sun turns the sky orange. Somewhere, a child plays a flute badly. A dog barks 3 times. You know which dog it is. You always know. You lie back on the porch and let your limbs stretch. The wood creaks beneath you. You haven't accomplished anything today, but you've trained. Like a sad monk with a throwing star in his sleeve. And that has to count for something. You wake up with a cramp in your stomach that could be anything from mild indigestion to slow-acting poison you forgot you even swallowed. Again, you sit up, clutching your side, and mutter a quiet curse at the half-pickled radish you had for dinner. It's hard to know whether it was too old or not old enough. Either way, your insides are staging a small rebellion. This is not an unusual morning. You move slowly to your feet, letting your joints and gut negotiate their way toward upright function. You shuffle out into the courtyard, bend to scoop water from the rain barrel and splash your face. Cold, sharp, briefly sobering. And then the cramp returns like a bad memory. Being a ninja, it turns out, is less about glory and more about managing discomfort with dignity, especially during missions. You think back to that time in 1621, when you had to spend 3 nights in an attic above a noble's kitchen, surviving on beetles and condensation. Your reward? A whispered thank you and a packet of dried seaweed. It's not like you expected gold coins or poetry in your honor, but some kind of acknowledgement beyond the occasional boiled root would have been nice. Instead, your life has been a long parade of tight crawl spaces, cold rice, and missions that sound dramatic only in retrospect. Historians still argue whether ninja were assassins, saboteurs, or scouts. Most people imagine you slinking across moonlit roofs, dispatching guards with silent precision. In reality, you've spent more time in storage closets than battlefields. One mission had you disguised as a tea boy for 2 weeks just to find out which retainer was secretly gambling with clan funds. Spoiler, it was all of them. And the food. Dear gods, the food. Travel rations are what nightmares are made of. Dried fish, fermented beans, and the ever-reliable rice ball stuffed with sour plums so sharp it could strip paint. You remember once eating something in a forest that may have been a mushroom. Or a slug. You survived, technically. There was a time you had to infiltrate a sake brewery posing as a delivery hand. You thought, briefly, that the job might have perks. You were wrong. You spent 5 days ankle-deep in spoiled barley mash, developing a rash that still flares up when the humidity's wrong. Not to mention the long waits. So many missions involved not doing anything, waiting for a signal, waiting for someone to fall asleep, waiting for the moon to shift behind a cloud. You once waited for 6 hours in a chicken coop because your contact was late. The rooster pecked your shin every 20 minutes. You still have the scar. It looks vaguely like shame. There's no fame in this work. No crowds cheering for the man who eavesdropped on a merchant's divorce to recover a debt list. No songs about the agent who delivered a sealed envelope hidden inside a fish. Just the gut rot, the bad smells, and the bruised dignity of knowing your job is important, but only if no one ever finds out you did it. You remember one mission during the rainy season where you had to cross a flooded river to intercept a message. You wrapped your clothes in oilskin and tied your tools to your body. You slipped on the rocks, slammed your shoulder into a submerged log, and crawled onto the far bank soaked and shivering. The message turned out to be a love note between two shopkeepers. Not strategic intel, just poorly written poetry and a crude drawing of a cat. You still have that drawing for some reason. It makes you laugh sometimes. Tonight, you're feeling a bit nostalgic, so you pull out your old field journal. The ink is faded, the pages slightly chewed by time and mice. Inside, a record of your less-than-glorious moments. Mission 32, hidden stable, got kicked by horse. Twice. No intel acquired. Mission 41, climbed wrong roof. Sat for 4 hours before realizing the house was abandoned. Mission 54, contact sneezed during handoff. Entire plan collapsed. Blamed me. Mission 55, successfully escaped through sewer. Smell lingered for 9 days. Mission 72, received reward, moldy rice cake and nod of approval. You close the book with a sigh. It's both embarrassing and endearing. These entries aren't tales of high drama. They're reminders of your real life, quiet, messy, unromantic, but still yours. Even your most glorious success, stealing the plans for a regional garrison, was immediately classified and destroyed. No one knows it was you, not even your clan. Your sensei said, "Good work," then handed you a broom to sweep the courtyard. There's no ceremony in your world. No medals, just a nod and a cold bath, maybe a pickled plum if you're lucky. Sometimes you fantasize about fame. What if people knew what you did? What if they recognized you on the street, called you a hero? Then you remember you'd probably be executed for breaching secrecy codes. So, maybe best not. You once met a samurai who lamented how little honor there was in peace. You almost laughed in his face. At least people knew your name, you thought. At least you get to walk tall in public. You walk hunched, quiet, with your head lowered, not from shame, but from practice. Because attention is danger. And danger now is just indigestion and the possibility of being overcharged for miso. You stir your evening meal slowly, some kind of soup, if we're being generous. You toss in a sprig of wild herb you found growing behind the shrine. You think it's edible. You hope. Maybe the bitterness will distract your stomach from its current rebellion. You sit under the eaves, watching the rain tap against the courtyard stones. No missions tonight. No messages. Just another night of stillness. But still, you check your kit. Still, you pace the perimeter before bed. Still, you sleep with one eye almost open. Because even if there's no glory left, and all you've got to show for your skill is a mild gut ache, and some rope burns from the last time you tripped on your own climbing line, you're still a ninja. And being a ninja isn't about the glory. It's about the grit, the repetition, the quiet defiance of disappearing into a world that doesn't need you while still being ready in case it does. You lie down, pull your ragged blanket over your aching belly, and whisper a small joke to the shadows. At least the chicken coop had a roof. You're halfway through your morning kata, balanced on one foot, breath steady, arms drawn in the classic crane pose, when you hear it. A footstep. Just one. Soft, like someone trying very hard not to be heard. You don't flinch, you don't move, you just listen. The wind rustles the tall grass. A crow caws, then there, another shuffle. Not an amateur. You shift the rhythm of your breathing almost imperceptibly. You draw in the scent of the air, pine needles, damp soil, and smoke. No, roasted barley. Someone had tea recently. And they're close. You lower your stance and turn, deliberately slow, eyes flicking toward the edge of the courtyard. A shadow vanishes behind the shed. You don't chase, you smile. Because you know who it is. You walk back inside, wipe your hands on your sleeves, and light the brazier. A few moments later, there's a polite knock on the frame of the door. That same beat you recognize from years ago, 2 quick, 1 slow. You slide open the panel and nod. He looks older, somehow more faded than you remember, like a sketch someone left in the rain. His name is Shinji, or at least it was when you last saw him. You never asked if it was real. You didn't need to. He bows, steps in, and removes his sandals. His socks are still stitched with the same clan pattern as yours, though barely visible through years of wear. You both sit without speaking. Words can wait. First, tea. You boil the water, measuring leaves from your dwindling stash. The leaves are stale, but Shinji doesn't complain. You pour carefully, set the cups between you, and wait. After the first sip, he finally speaks. I thought you were dead. You shrug. I thought you were the tax collector. He smiles. It's quick like a crack in a mask, then gone. There was a time when you two competed for the same contracts, same missions, same lord's favor. You once sabotaged his signal line with moths. He retaliated by switching out your ink with plum juice. Petty, yes. Effective, also yes. You were constantly trying to outmaneuver each other while pretending to be allies. But those were the early days, back when missions were frequent, when everyone had purpose, before things got quiet. You share dried rice crackers and stories now. Shinji tells you about a recent job, guard duty for a minor official with more paranoia than actual enemies. He spent 2 weeks hiding behind a paper screen, waiting for an attack that never came. Got paid in rice and gratitude, he says. Ah, you reply, the rich stuff. You talk late into the morning, about old missions, about shared failures, about how you both got food poisoning from that one tavern in Kanazawa. You remember how he once mistook a dog for a contact. You laugh until your sides hurt. But then the conversation shifts. Shinji leans in. There's movement. You raise an eyebrow. Not here, not yet, but west of the river. Some clan nobody's naming names is poking around again, looking for information. Information is code. It always has been. Could be blackmail, could be leverage for marriage negotiations, could be dirt on a regional magistrate. Doesn't matter. It means someone wants a ninja, and not to sweep floors. You stir the tea with your finger. Why tell me? He shrugs. Felt like old times. That's not it, not entirely. You both know the truth. He's tired. You're all tired. And there's comfort in numbers, even small ones. Even ones who once tried to sabotage your supply of throwing needles. Would you take the job? You ask. He doesn't answer right away. Instead, he looks out at the courtyard. The sunlight is patchy through the clouds. A cat crosses lazily in the distance. If I had someone to cover my back, he says at last. You sip your tea slowly. Let the words sit. Warm your hands on the cup. Then, we'd need to dust off the protocols. Already started. You smile. Historians still argue whether ninja worked alone or in teams. The truth, you worked however you had to. And sometimes, the person most likely to stab you was also the one who'd save your life when the mission fell apart. Trust was always relative. Shinji pulls a small pouch from his sleeve and slides it across the table. Inside, a signal mirror, a wax-sealed letter, and most precious of all, a folded map. You open it, its hand-drawn, smudged, a little water-damaged, but the locations marked are clear. A shrine, a merchant's house, a checkpoint. Test run, you ask. He nods. You both rise, old bones popping. Shinji grunts. We're too old for this. We were too old 10 years ago, you reply. You prepare quickly, minimal gear, light shoes, hidden blade in the sash, a pouch of pepper powder, nothing fancy. You consider your old climbing sickle but leave it behind. You won't need it today. The path to the shrine is uphill. You move in silence. No words, no ceremony, just shared rhythm. You remember how well you moved together once, how your footfalls synced, how you could communicate with glances. That ease is still there, slightly slower, but there. At the shrine, you wait. A courier passes and Shinji intercepts with a casual bump of shoulders. Papers drop. Apologies exchanged. You slide in, lift a small folded paper from the man's sleeve, and vanish back into the woods. A test run, a warning, a proof of relevance. You breathe hard but steady. The wind shifts, you smile. Later, back at your house, you pour more tea. It felt good, Shinji says. It felt real, you answer. You don't know what the paper says yet. Doesn't matter. The point is you remembered who you were, and you weren't alone. You finish the tea in silence. Then he rises. I'll be back next moon, he says. You nod. Bring better tea. He vanishes down the path. You sit for a while longer, breathing, listening. The world may not need you every day, but today it did, and you were ready. Spy versus spy, maybe. But also, tea. Always tea. The worst part isn't the splinters, or the way your back aches from lugging firewood down steep hills, or how your hands are permanently nicked from splitting logs that explode in all the wrong directions. The worst part is the bowing. So much bowing. You used to bow with purpose, strategy, a subtle tilt to disguise your real height, a practiced motion that hid your right hand, ready with a blade. Now you bow because someone wants 3 bundles of pine, and you can't afford to lose another customer to the merchant with the slightly less hostile smile 2 stalls down. Because now you work retail. Officially, you're a woodcutter's assistant, which sounds like something rustic and masculine. But really, it means you stand at a stall all day while villagers point at bundles of sticks and haggle over half-mown coins like their lives depend on it. You nod. You smile. You say, very good quality, even when you know that particular bundle contains wood that still hisses when burned. You used to sneak into castles. Now you're bartering with elderly women over kindling. The irony isn't lost on you. Your cover job as a firewood seller was never meant to be permanent. It started during the lean years, after the missions dried up and the clan's coffers turned to dust. Blend in, your sensei said. Be useful. And so, you learned to stack logs and carry crates and smile until your face ached. But then the customers started coming back. And then they started expecting you to be there. And now, well, you've got regulars. A woman who buys the same 3 bundles every 3rd day and complains about her chickens. A boy who steals a stick every time and thinks you don't notice. A retired monk who barters with incense instead of coins. You haven't done a mission in 3 seasons. Your disguise became your job. And the worst part, you're good at it. You stack with precision, wrap bundles tight, remember who likes cedar over pine. Your reflexes help you dodge dropped coins and sudden dogs. You can make change with one hand while pulling splinters from the other. It's a kind of art in its own pitiful way. Historians still argue whether ninja kept civilian identities to blend in, or whether many simply became craftsmen when the war economy dried up. The truth is both. You were trained to hide in plain sight, but no one ever said how long you might be stuck in that hiding place. You lean on your stall now, watching the village square pulse with life. Children run past with dragonfly kites. A samurai you vaguely remember from a mission 5 years ago passes without recognition. You want to say something, anything to remind him, but you don't. You're the wood guy now. At noon, you sneak a rice ball from your pouch. It's still warm. You made it this morning. There was a time when you had to rely on stolen rations and foraged greens. Now you budget, you meal prep. You somehow own a ledger. It's sad, but also stabilizing. You never imagined comfort would come from a routine. But there's a peace to knowing you won't be ambushed in your sleep. To knowing that tomorrow, someone will definitely ask for 4 bundles and then try to pay with a button and an IOU. You sweep your stall, sharpen your hatchet, and organize your firewood with the kind of obsessive care usually reserved for shrine altars. Every piece stacked in even rows, every splinter filed away. A group of children stop and stare at you. One of them whispers something, the others giggle. You pretend not to hear, but you catch a word, ninja. You glance up slowly, make eye contact with the ringleader. Then, as if by accident, you toss a small stick in the air and catch it behind your back. Their mouths drop open. You say nothing, just wink once and return to stacking. They scream with delight and run off, shouting about shadow warriors and secret agents. You chuckle. You didn't mean to show off, but it feels good. Still, retail is not glamorous. A woman yells at you because her last bundle smoked too much. You apologize with grace. A dog pees on the corner of your display. You sigh. A drunk staggers by and demands a refund for wood he never bought. You give him a splinter as a receipt and he wanders off satisfied. Your shift ends at dusk. You tie up the day's coins in a cloth pouch, lock up your inventory under a tarp, and walk home along the back path. It's quiet, peaceful. You know every step without looking. You make tea, light a candle, eat a modest meal, feed the cat. Then, before bed, you open the floorboard. The tools are still there, dustier, a little more rusted, but they haven't moved. You consider taking one out, just to hold, just to remember. But you leave them where they are. Because tomorrow, someone needs firewood. And you'll be there. In your head, you imagine the gossip. That woodcutter is too quiet. He moves like wind. He caught a falling log with one hand. Maybe you're not forgotten. Maybe you're hiding in plain sight just fine. Maybe, somehow, you're both. It starts with a scroll. You're sipping your morning barley tea, admiring the fact that your left knee hasn't twinged yet today. A small miracle. When the courier appears at your doorway, expressionless as a statue carved out of mild disapproval. He bows, you bow. He hands you a sealed scroll. You take it with the kind of dread normally reserved for surprise tax assessments or invitations to weddings where you're expected to dance. You already know who it's from. The seal's familiar, the lacquered red of Clan Arasaka. And that means one thing. A samurai has decided he needs you again. You suppress a sigh, offer a thank you grunt, and close the door. The scroll, once opened, is painfully predictable. Flowery language. 5 honorifics in one sentence. And then, finally, the meat of the matter. The noble Lord Arasaka is concerned about whispers in his estate and would appreciate your subtle presence to investigate. Subtle presence. That means, please sneak around my servants, dig through personal things, and possibly blackmail my rivals. But do it so I don't have to know about it. Classic samurai behavior. You groan and stretch your back. It was only a matter of time. See, the samurai class runs everything these days. The Tokugawa Shogunate has clamped down on real conflict, so now samurai direct their energy toward intrigue. They hold poetry contests with veiled insults. They fund kabuki troops to one-up each other. And when that gets boring, they remember you exist. Samurai bosses are the worst. They're all smug politeness and suppressed rage. They want you to be invisible and efficient, humble and miraculous. If they ever acknowledge your skill, it's with a nod so tiny you wonder if they meant to do it or were just adjusting their posture. You remember your first job under a samurai lord. He made you wait in a broom closet for 7 hours because he wanted plausible deniability. You emerged smelling like old lacquer and betrayal. Historians still argue whether ninja were considered beneath samurai or just inconveniently unclassifiable. You could have told them, you're useful but not respected, valued, but only when no one else is watching. You prepare carefully for this one. Nothing too obvious. No shuriken. No smoke bombs. Just a folding knife, a packet of powdered dye, and your best walking sandals. The Arasaka estate is ostentatious. Giant stone lanterns. Painted gates. Servants who pretend not to notice you even as they whisper behind your back. Lord Arasaka himself is as you remember, stiff as a scarecrow and just as emotionally expressive. He greets you with a polite nod, waves you toward a side corridor and says, "Make it clean." Make what clean? He doesn't elaborate. So you begin the real work. For 2 days, you ghost through his compound. You find falsified tax ledgers hidden in a lacquer box beneath the floorboards. One servant is clearly embezzling. Another is passing information to a rival merchant family. One of the younger cousins is attempting to learn Dutch and hiding the books in the koi pond filter. You almost respect that. You make notes, not too detailed, never in ink. A mixture of mental records and a few smudged characters scratched into your sleeve's lining. Lord Arasaka calls you in on the 3rd day, offers you tea, which is how you know he's about to say something insulting. "You've aged," he says, sipping delicately. You smile, "So have your koi." He blinks slowly, not sure if that was an insult or a compliment. You let him wonder. He asks what you found. You tell him only the bits that matter. The rest is leverage. not for blackmail, but for survival. You've learned that giving everything to a samurai is like offering a cat your last fish. They'll take it and then claw you for letting the tail dangle. He grunts, nods, and miracle of miracles, hands you a small pouch. Real coin, not just dried mushrooms or honor. You leave without bowing, just once, just for you. Back at home, you sit by the fire and count the coins. It's enough to patch the roof and maybe buy some new sandals. You feel a pang of guilt, like you've betrayed your monk-like lifestyle. But then remember your left sandal has a hole big enough for your big toe to greet strangers. You sip tea and reflect. Samurai want what they can't admit needing. You, people like you. People who aren't bound by law or ceremony, who can move between worlds, who can watch without being watched. But they'll never say it. They'll never write a poem about the time you saved their necks. They'll never build a statue of the nameless man who found their wife's lover or recovered a stolen scroll or quietly removed the drunken cousin who said too much at a banquet. You think back to the last time a samurai tried to thank you. He sent you a scroll praising your decorum and restraint. It was so vague. It could have been about someone who refilled his ink pot without spilling. You've learned to take your wins in private. Like the time you replaced a forged land deed with the original without anyone knowing. Or when you stole a rival clan's war map and replaced it with a drawing of a chicken wearing armor. They took it seriously, for weeks. These small triumphs are your currency. The kind of stories you tell yourself while stirring rice, chuckling like a madman with a secret. You don't resent the samurai, not really. You resent the system that made them respectable and you disposable. But also, you're glad they never fully understand you. Because mystery is your last advantage. And besides, if they truly knew how you spent your evenings, sitting cross-legged in your hovel, practicing your tea-pouring posture while reciting clan gossip to your cat, they might stop being afraid of you. And that fear, that little flicker in their eyes when they see you in the corner of the estate, half-shadowed and not smiling, that's worth more than coin. You're trying, really trying to stay awake. But it's hard when your job today consists of copying a scroll, by hand, in full. Again. You shift slightly, adjusting your posture on the floor, which has all the comfort of a board made from aggressive intentions. Your right foot is asleep, your left eye is twitching, and your brush keeps drying out. You dip it again into the ink stone, exhale through your nose, and resume the most tedious part of the ninja lifestyle that no one ever talks about. Documentation. See, being a ninja isn't all throwing stars and silent escapes. It's paperwork. A lot of it. Endless scrolls recording observations, coded messages, mission logs, herbal recipes, and even instructions for cleaning your own sandals for optimal tread silence. You copy every stroke of kanji with care because your sensei has threatened to throw you into the stream if your brushwork slants even slightly left again. You're not sure he's joking. People think of ninja as feral wildlings in black cloaks, but you've spent just as many hours with ink on your hands as you have with blood. Maybe more, because unlike wounds, poor calligraphy lingers in shame. You pause, stretch your wrist, and glance down at the already completed portion of the scroll. On the night of the third moon, the subject was observed leaving the compound at the rooster's call. He bore a small bundle wrapped in red cloth. No known insignia. Yusai, that night, you were the one watching that gate. You remember it clearly. It was cold. You stepped in something unspeakable from a stray dog, and now you're reliving the whole thing in brushstrokes. Historians still argue whether ninja were literate en masse or whether only a select few were trusted with record-keeping. In your experience, everyone learned. Sloppily sometimes, but learned. Because memory fades, but ink lasts forever. And the scrolls, those were the only proof your missions ever happened. You glance at the stack beside you. 10 more to copy, 3 to redact, 2 that have developed mysterious water stains, 1 that includes a drawing someone clearly added out of boredom, a raccoon wearing a hat, probably Gyro's work. You consider setting fire to the entire pile. Instead, you get back to it. Your writing style, you've been told, is functional, not graceful, not artful, but readable. You take that as a compliment. The best code is clear, not clever. Still, you add a flourish to the last character just to prove you're not a complete aesthetic failure. But scrolls aren't just logs. They're layers. Each document might be a code, a fake-out, a double meaning. You've written letters that seemed like romantic poetry but were actually maps, recipes that contained schedules, and once a detailed inventory of fish that was really a list of potential informants. You miss that one, especially the trout. Of course, the clan has its own codebook, a heavy, thread-bound monstrosity that lives in the corner wrapped in 3 layers of cloth. Only 4 people are allowed to touch it. You are one of them, which means you spend a lot of time decoding other people's bad handwriting. You remember once deciphering a message that said, "The wind sweeps the lilies eastward." Poetic, right? It turned out to mean, "Do not enter the latrine, trap set." You learned the hard way that metaphors can be dangerous. Some scrolls are meant to be read only once. You write them with special ink that fades after sunlight exposure. Others are hidden inside bamboo shafts, rolled tight and sealed with wax. A few are disguised as religious texts, because no one dares to interrupt a monk mid-sutra, especially if he's chanting loud enough to rattle his own incense burner. You also maintain the inventory of field provisions, which includes such thrilling entries as dried sardines, 16, but 2 are questionable. Chili powder, remainder clumped, may cause sneezing at wrong moment. A needle and thread, tangled beyond redemption. A disguise cloth, currently smells like pickled eel, unclear why. It's not glamorous, it's not exciting, but it's vital. Because if you're caught without your gear, it's your fault. If you forget a safe house location, it's your fault. If you don't remember that the old signal for abort is now red chrysanthemum instead of white turnip, guess what? Still your fault. So you copy, you memorize, you review. Even though your legs are numb, your tea is cold, and your sensei occasionally walks by and hums judgmentally at your brushstrokes. There's a shelf in your sleeping area that holds your personal archive. Dozens of neatly rolled scrolls, each one labeled in your crisp, controlled hand. Most are mission logs. A few are personal reflections. One is just a list of particularly satisfying eavesdropped conversations, including, the fishmonger thinks his wife is poisoning him. She is. A merchant's parrot repeats embarrassing phrases. Useful distraction tool. A town official dreams of being a kabuki actor in secret rehearsals. You reread that last one sometimes. It's comforting. Late into the evening, the candle burns low, and your brush begins to stutter. You flex your fingers, shake your wrist, and keep going. You finish the final scroll just as the moon rises fully. You blow on the ink to dry it, roll the parchment carefully, and place it with the others. Then, and only then, do you lean back with a sigh that carries the weight of 3 lifetimes. Your sensei walks by, peeks over your shoulder, and grunts. Still too many tail flicks on your kai strokes, he mutters. You want to tell him to choke on a brush. Instead, you bow. Then he adds, almost grudgingly, but your tsu has improved. Praise, actual praise, you blink. He's gone before you can reply. You fall asleep at your desk, head pillowed on a stack of dry scrolls, fingers stained black, dreams swimming in swirling kanji. Some people fight wars. You write them, one brushstroke at a time. The wind rattles the shutters. The cat is pawing at something you'll pretend isn't a dead beetle, and your back is already sore, and it's not even sunrise. You blink blearily into the dark, reach for your robe, and stub your toe on a wooden bucket. Because, of course, today is your turn to clean. Being a ninja comes with many expectations. Some dramatic, espionage, sabotage, escape artistry, and some deeply mundane, like sweeping the training hall, or scrubbing moss from stone paths, or, heaven help you, cleaning out the compost latrine with a bamboo scoop and nothing but your self-worth to shield you. You always thought your life in the shadows would involve more daggers and fewer rags. But here you are, hunched over with a broom in hand, sweeping dust from a floor so old you're sure it predates the very idea of dust. This is not punishment. It's not even punishment disguised as responsibility. It's just maintenance. The quiet, unglamorous labor of keeping a one-sprout ninja compound from collapsing into literal rubble. You sweep with practiced precision, long, fluid strokes. You'd like to think your form is elegant, maybe even stealthy. If you had to assassinate someone using a broom, you probably could. You'd just rather not. The hall is lined with faded tatami mats and wood beams darkened from decades of incense and regret. Your clan emblem, once carved proudly into the main pillar, is nearly worn smooth. You think about recarving it sometimes. Then you remember the time you accidentally stabbed yourself with a chisel trying to make a replacement name plaque for your room. One bandaged thumb later, you decided to let heritage fade naturally. The courtyard needs raking next. You cross the threshold barefoot, taking a moment to feel the gravel beneath your feet, sharp, uneven, grounding. This was once a training tactic, sensitivity exercises. Now it's just what happens when you can't afford new sandals. You rake the path into neat, deliberate lines. It's not for show. It's for silence. Loose gravel makes noise underfoot, and you still train like someone might chase you one day, even if the only thing pursuing you now is mildew. Historians still argue whether ninja compounds were utilitarian or spiritual spaces. You found them to be both. You've prayed in the same space where you once practiced silent takedowns. You've meditated beside the compost pit. The duality is part of the charm, or the trauma, possibly both. Back inside, someone knocked over the ink rack. Again, probably Gyro. He says he's practicing night maneuvers. You say he's a walking disaster. You mop up the spill with a cloth that's been more ink than fabric for years. Then you check the storeroom. Half the food stores are down. Mice again. You pull the shelving out, find the chewed grain sacks, and sigh. You'll have to lay the traps. Or maybe set up that old reflex board, the one that drops a bamboo stick on your head if you flinch too slowly. You repurpose it to teach rodents fear. So far, it's working better on Gyro. The weapons room is next. You unlock the door with a brass key that once felt like a sacred item. Now it just lives under a rock near the door because no one ever bothers stealing from Ninja. Not because of fear, because there's barely anything left worth stealing. Inside, the room smells like oil and dust and nostalgia. You check the racks. Throwing stars, dull. Rope, frayed. Climbing claws, rusted. You owe what you can. Organize the rest. Find a small dagger tucked behind a beam. You wondered where that went. Last seen on a failed mission involving a duck, a jug of sake, and an extremely judgmental noblewoman. You hold the blade in your hand, feel the balance, smile a little. Then you set it back on the rack, perfectly centered. You close the door, tie it shut with a cord, and move on. Out back, the drainage ditch is clogged again. You kneel beside it, reach into the stagnant muck, and pull out a wad of leaves and one mysteriously angry frog. It blinks at you, unimpressed, and hops off. You used to clean wounds. Now you clean gutters. Progress. You pass the shrine next. Small, wooden, dedicated to an ancestor whose name is now illegible. You sweep the steps, light a stick of incense. Bow, ask for strength, not in battle, just to make it through another day without cursing the broom. Later, you boil water and scrub the tatami mats. Your knees ache. Your hands are raw. The soap stings a scratch you didn't even know you had. You think back to your early training, the old stories. A true ninja moves like wind, strikes like lightning, disappears like smoke. No one said anything about mopping like a housemaid. Still, you understand now. The discipline wasn't just for missions. It was for this, maintaining order when there's no battle to fight. When the war is against decay, rot, and entropy. When your job is to keep the structure intact, even if no one will ever thank you for it. You eat dinner late, rice with pickled greens. You share a bit with the cat. He judges you but accepts it. As night falls, the compound is quiet, clean, the floors shine. The mats are aligned, the tools are sorted, the fire crackles just right. And maybe, just maybe, you feel a bit of pride. You didn't chase spies today. You didn't climb any castle walls. But you kept the old place from falling apart, and that matters. Even if you were mostly a janitor. Tomorrow, maybe you'll be something else again. There was a time you imagined masks as mysterious, an essential part of the ninja image. Cloth tied across the face, hiding identity, amplifying the fear of the unseen. You thought you'd wear one while darting across rooftops under the moon, or while stealing secret letters from guarded chests. Instead, you're wearing one to keep from spreading a cough. It's mid-autumn, and something wicked has taken hold of your chest. Not dramatic enough to kill you, but just insistent enough to make you sound like an elderly bellows every time you breathe. Your mask is a simple strip of linen, tied haphazardly behind your ears. It's damp with your own breath and slightly scented with the eucalyptus poultice you chewed this morning. Romantic, not even a little. Masks were part of your gear for years, but not for the reasons the stories like to claim. You never wore them to look cool. You wore them because the haylofts you hid in were full of dust, and the sewage canals you crawled through were full of, well, not air. A mask was protection from coughing fits, allergies, and being identified by that one mole near your chin. Historians still argue whether ninja wore full-face coverings in the way modern media portrays. Most of you didn't. The goal was not to look mysterious, it was to look ordinary. A scarf, a hood, a bandana tied over the nose, these weren't statements. They were practical, like socks, or not falling off a roof. You remember a mission years ago where your contact insisted on a full head wrap, said it was the traditional way. You tripped on your own trailing cloth and nearly impaled yourself on a laundry hook. Traditional indeed. Now, your mask is more domestic. You tie it on every morning before heading to the village square, not because anyone fears you'll breathe secrets, but because there's a cough going around and the baker's wife keeps giving you the stink eye. You lean over your firewood stall and hack gently into your elbow. Your breath fogs your glasses. Yes, you wear glasses now. Nobody ever tells you ninja work ruins your eyes. All that squinting into dark corners. There's a price. The merchant across the square waves at you with a pitying look. You wave back, and then spend 10 minutes trying to remember if she's the one who once paid you in salted plum paste to spy on her cousin's boyfriend. Maybe, maybe not. You make one sale that morning, a cranky man who insists pine wood is too smoky, then buys 3 bundles of it anyway. You bow, thank him, and try not to cough on the coin he hands you. By midday, the wind picks up and your cough worsens. You chew a root that tastes like wet pepper and burnt sandals. It helps, a little. You head home early. There in your storage chest, you still have your old field mask. Black linen, double-layered with an inner fold meant to hold herbs or charcoal powder to filter toxins. You pick it up gently. The fabric is soft from age and smells faintly of cedar. You remember the last time you used it, for real. You'd been infiltrating a small clan's gathering. Rumors said they were experimenting with new smokes, blinding powders that could make a man forget what direction was up. You spent 3 days sneaking through kitchens and tea houses, waiting for the moment. When they finally released their secret smoke, you were already masked, already ready. You walked straight through the fog while others stumbled, coughing and blind. You retrieved the letter. You vanished into the hills. No one knew how. They blamed spirits. You smile at the memory, not because of the success, because you miss that kind of clarity. A situation with defined edges, a goal, an exit, not like now, where your greatest obstacle is your own immune system. You wear the old field mask that night while you cook your modest meal, partially out of nostalgia, partially because the smoke from your damp firewood is giving you a headache. It fits perfectly, like coming home. Gyro stops by mid-evening, carrying something under his arm. He sees your mask and raises an eyebrow, planning to storm the rice merchant. You croak out a laugh, only if he overcharges me again. He hands you a jar. Inside, honey, lemon, and something bitter floating in the bottom. From my aunt, said it cured her husband's cough. Didn't he die last spring? Yes, but not from the cough. You take it anyway. He sits for a while. You drink your strange potion. You both stare at the fire. I miss real masks, he says suddenly. You glance over. The ones that meant something. he adds. When you wore one, people feared you. You nod. Now they just assume I have a cold. He grins. Progress. Regression, with better tea. You both chuckle, then cough. He leaves not long after. You wash your mask, hang it to dry, and stare at it as the flames flicker. Masks, you think, aren't just for hiding. They're for surviving. They let you breathe in smoke, dust, illness, fear. They give you the space between self and danger. Now, they also give you distance from awkward conversations about your persistent sniffles. You tuck the old mask away carefully. Maybe, one day, you'll need it again for something that isn't just seasonal pollen. Until then, you'll wear your simple cloth wrap. You'll cough into your sleeve. You'll keep your distance. And just like always, you'll stay quiet. Unnoticed. Masked. Even if it's just to keep from sneezing on the incense burner. Another morning. Another transaction involving cucumbers you didn't ask for. You stare at the ceramic jar the merchant just handed you. It's warm from the sun, smells faintly of vinegar and thyme, and has a wax seal that's already cracked. Payment, he said, for the firewood you delivered 2 days ago. Special pickles, he added proudly, as if that justified the lack of actual coin. You bow politely, because of course you do. Then you carry the jar back up the hill to your home, whispering under your breath, "May your pickles ferment unevenly." Once you were paid in silver, small pouches pressed silently into your palm in the dead of night. Once your skills earned silk, grain, even favors you could trade for real things. But that was when warlords wanted secrets, not seasoned cucumbers. Now, you get paid in pickles. Sometimes sake. Once, a bag of chestnuts that turned out to be mostly weevils. It's not that people won't pay. It's that people don't know how to value you anymore. You're not a samurai. You're not a merchant. You're not a farmer. You're a strange, quiet figure who sometimes knows things he shouldn't and can appear out of shadows even when the sun is high. And so they give you what they can, which, 9 times out of 10, is something that smells like a festival food stall and expires within a week. You set the jar next to your other payments. There's a stack of dried kelp, a bundle of hand-woven straw sandals, wrong size, a figurine of a fox made from paper mache, and a bottle of what may be plum wine or plum vinegar. You haven't had the nerve to open it. You're not ungrateful, not entirely. There's a certain charm to being paid in the economy of odd things. A woman once gave you an antique comb and whispered, "Use it to bribe the ghosts." A child handed you a feather and said, "This is for running fast." You took both, bowed deeply, and added them to your growing pile of mystery compensation. Historians still argue whether ninja were fairly compensated or barely fed. The answer is simple: both. Depends on the job, the employer, the season, and whether someone's grandmother decided fermented daikon counted as currency this week. There were good years. You remember them. Gold, or at least good rice. Lodgings with actual bedding. That time you got paid with a box of high-quality ink and didn't even have to share it. Then there were the other years. Lean winters. Long nights. You once accepted a sack of miso that turned out to be mostly mold and hope. Still, you adapt. You always do. You inventory your strange economy, like a merchant of nonsense. 3 jars of pickles, one exploded last month. 2 bundles of dried persimmons, suspiciously sticky. 1 small bell, possibly cursed. 4 paper fans, one painted with a scene of a very smug-looking cat. 1 charm that allegedly prevents back pain. It doesn't. It's not useless, exactly. You've learned to trade. The tea shop owner likes pickles. The shrine keeper once accepted the cat fan in exchange for incense. You're slowly building your own web of barter. It's inelegant, but it works. Sometimes, when you're in a better mood, you imagine writing a scroll. The Ninja's Guide to Improvised Economics. Chapter 1, How to Turn Seaweed into Shelter. Chapter 2, The Art of Looking Like You Enjoy Someone's Terrible Homemade Pickles. There's a technique to it. You must nod slowly, chew thoughtfully, make a humming noise that suggests enlightenment, and always say, "Ah, very traditional," no matter what it tastes like. You take today's pickles down to the river and clean the jar. You taste one. It's spicy, salty, it's hard to tell. Your tongue briefly goes numb. You're not even mad. That's actually kind of impressive. You remember a mission, years ago now, where your entire payment was a painted gourd. The Lord said it was a symbol of eternal vigilance. You used it to store rice, eternal rice. That gourd cracked last spring. You buried it under the plum tree. Sometimes you pour tea there, for luck. You wonder, not for the first time, if this is how your story ends. Not with a final mission, not with one last dramatic rooftop escape, but slowly, quietly, gathering jars of pickles and vague gratitude from people who don't know what else to give. You don't blame them. You're still here, and that's worth something. You spend the afternoon delivering more firewood. No one pays you in coin. One woman gives you socks. Another leaves a bag of dried mushrooms. You thank her, you mean it. Later, as the sky turns gold and your knees remind you that you're not young anymore, you sit on the porch, sip tea sweetened with stolen temple sugar, and nibble one of the pickles. It's sour enough to make your teeth hum. You wince, then you grin. You're not rich, but you are fed. You're not celebrated, but you are remembered, vaguely, obliquely, in the way people bow when they see you and say things like, "You always seem to know when I'm about to sneeze." And that somehow is enough. For now. You pat your belly. The pickle grumbles agreeably, or rebelliously, hard to tell. You make a mental note. Next time, trade for rice cakes. Pickles are a fine tribute. But rice never makes you hallucinate your ancestors. You wake up to silence. Not the peaceful kind. Not the soft morning hush with birds chirping and tea steam rising. No, this is the other silence. The sharp-edged kind. The kind that presses in around your chest and makes you hold your breath before you even know why. You get up slowly. Your bones pop. Your right shoulder twinges. You wrap your sash and step out into the morning fog. The compound feels hollow. One mat in the sleeping room is empty, neatly folded, the blanket gone. You already know what that means. Taro is not coming back. No one says it. There's no announcement. Just his absence, like a candle that burned out overnight. You sit beside the other 2 remaining clanmates, Gyro and Haru. No one looks up. No one has to. Gyro mutters something about needing more tea. Haru pulls a splinter from his thumb and doesn't look up. You remember when this place was full. Dozens of quiet men and women moving like shadows, eating quickly, rarely speaking, always watching. Now, you could yell and hear the echo come back sad. Taro had been older than you, not fast anymore, but sharp. He had a good eye, especially for trails. He used to say things like, "A footprint is a confession," which sounded wiser than it actually was. But he was kind. He once taught you how to boil moss for soup when you were sick and hiding in a root cellar for 2 days. Now he's gone. You don't know how. You don't ask. Maybe he took a job too risky. Maybe the poison was slower than expected. Maybe he finally got tired of waiting to matter again. Historians still argue about the mortality rate of ninja. Of course they do. Hard to calculate when no one was supposed to know you existed. But you know the truth. Ninja don't retire. They vanish. They get lost, or quiet, or carried out wrapped in cloth with no names spoken. This work was never safe, even during peace. Especially during peace. Peace kills slowly, like boredom with a dagger. You spend the day sweeping, chopping wood, and checking the supplies out of habit. You try not to think about the echo in the hallway where Taro used to cough when the tea was too hot. You check the hiding places he maintained, the one under the loose tile in the courtyard, the little box behind the prayer statue. Empty, clean, like he cleared his desk before walking out into the mist. You find one thing left, a rolled-up piece of parchment behind the weapon rack, a haiku. Moss grows on my blade. Not from blood, but from waiting. Even stones forget. You read it twice, then burn it. That's what he would have wanted. That night, Jiro drinks too much sake and starts telling stories. Most are nonsense. Some are real. I remember when we had a signal system, colored lanterns, remember that? Taro lit the wrong one once, sent the whole team to the wrong warehouse. It was full of carpentry tools. We guarded hammers for 6 hours. You laugh. Haru smiles. Then Jiro gets quiet again. We should have told him he mattered. You all nod, but no one says it out loud. Because that's the truth of your work. You only matter when you're not seen. Your best missions are the ones no one remembers. Your best days are the ones where everything stays normal. But your losses, they're quiet too. No funeral, no shrine, just an empty mat and a memory you hope doesn't fade. You lie awake that night, staring at the ceiling. The shadows move like waves across the walls. You listen to every creak, every shift. You think about the others who are gone. Suzu, who could mimic bird calls so perfectly she once summoned a hawk by accident. Gone. No one knows how. Kenta, who used to make poison out of plum pits and fish bones, disappeared in spring, maybe his own brew. Atsuko, who ran faster than anyone and still got caught because she trusted the wrong lantern. You don't have a graveyard, just names whispered under your breath, offerings left under rocks, and dreams where you see them smiling, at peace, or at least resting. Sometimes when you pass strangers in town, you wonder if any are like you, former ninja, retired, hiding, quiet. Maybe they sell noodles now. Maybe they raise goats. Maybe they're waiting just like you. You want to believe you're not the last one left. But every season, it gets quieter. And you keep getting older. You train because you don't know what else to do. You write reports because someone might need them. You sharpen blades that haven't been thrown in years. And when you sweep the courtyard, you leave a space, just one spot untouched, where Taro always liked to sit with his tea. You say it's superstition, but really it's memory. You're still here, still sweeping, still waiting. One more day. It starts with a twitch behind your eye, then a rumble in your gut, then the slow, creeping realization that you might have poisoned yourself again. Not seriously, not the dramatic, foaming at the mouth kind of poisoned, just the everyday, light-headed, slightly hallucinating variety you've come to know and, well, tolerate. Like a coworker who won't stop humming or a neighbor who insists on burning citrus peels to chase off ghosts. This isn't new. You've lived like this for years. Because being a ninja means being constantly at risk of minor, inconvenient toxicity. You sigh, sit on the cool floorboards, and start breathing deeply through your nose. It helps, sort of, but your tongue still feels weirdly fuzzy, and the walls might be breathing slightly. Last night's tea probably wasn't tea. You poke the leftover leaves in your cup. It's possible you brewed a little too much dried aconite, or maybe the mugwort was old, or maybe the pickles you had with it had been fermenting since the previous shogunate. Who knows? You once asked your sensei how to tell if something is safe to eat. He said, "If it kills you, don't eat it again." Thanks, old man. Your body, over the years, has become something of a low-level toxic waste site. You've ingested everything from powdered toad skin to scorched mulberry leaves to the infamous black draft used to induce vomiting at critical moments. Once, during a mission, you faked death by slowing your heartbeat with a homemade herbal cocktail. The side effects lasted 3 days. You couldn't feel your toes. And then there's the poisons you've actually used for work, not just for fun indigestion. Historians still argue about the extent of poison use among ninja. Some say it was exaggerated by later myths. Others believe it was core to the art. You know, the truth lies somewhere in between, subtle, situational, and always risky. The problem is that ninja poisons weren't designed for stability. You didn't carry neatly labeled vials like a fantasy apothecary. You carried paper packets full of powders you had to remember by smell. Some were fatal. Some were just spicy. Some were spices. There was one mission where you had to slip poison into a rival retainer's cup. You agonized over the dose too much, and it would be obvious. Too little, and it'd just be a funny story the next day. In the end, he got a mild nosebleed, sneezed a lot, and forgot the meeting entirely, which was enough. You remember another time you laced your own weapon with frog venom, then promptly cut yourself with it while cleaning the blade. You spent 6 hours sweating through your robes and seeing stars shaped like turnips. There's a scroll somewhere, when you copied yourself, that lists all the toxins your clan ever used. You keep it sealed in a gourd because the ink is infused with something that causes itching if touched. A security measure, or a prank, possibly both. Of course, not all poisons are exotic. Most are plants you walk past daily. Some you grow in your own garden. A few are in your tea drawer right now. It's hard to keep track. You label them with cryptic brush strokes that made sense 5 years ago but now just look like abstract poetry. Today, your breakfast was rice with meat and a boiled root you think was burdock. It might have been foxglove. You'll find out by lunch. You keep a recovery kit for these situations. It's a little box with charcoal, powdered ginger, dried plum skin, and 3 pills that may or may not be chalk. You pop one into your mouth. It tastes like old sandals. You hope it helps. Gyro stops by midday and raises an eyebrow at your pallor. You look slightly green, he says. Compliment accepted. He hands you a small packet. From Haru, says it's good for purging toxins. You open it and stare at the contents. This is sand. Purifying sand. You consider the sand. You consider your stomach. You consider just drinking more tea and seeing where the day takes you. You've built up a kind of resistance. Not to everything, but to enough. You can chew on things that would put a merchant in a coma. You can survive a bad mushroom with only a mild fever and a 3-hour existential crisis. You've trained for this. Part of ninja life meant knowing what was safe in the wild. Which herbs to brew, which ones to burn, which ones to feed to your enemies disguised in dumplings. But knowledge doesn't guarantee safety. You've had to use your own body as a testing ground more times than you'd like to admit. You've gotten it wrong just as often as right. And each time you learned something. Like, if it smells like rotting chestnuts, don't eat it. Or, never accept tea from Gyro unless you saw him make it yourself. Poisoning yourself, just a little, is the occupational hazard no one puts on the scrolls. You sip water, slowly, carefully. The fuzziness is fading. Your hands stop shaking. You breathe. Later, you lie on your mat, bundled in your warmest blanket, watching the light shift across the ceiling. You're tired. Your belly gurgles. Your tongue feels mostly normal again. You survived. Again. You smile. You are a professional. You are trained. You are always slightly poisoned. But you're still here.